All right. Welcome back to Past Gas, the Donut Automotive History Podcast. My name is Nolan Sykes. Across from me, for the listener, is one James Pumphrey.
Hello.
And then to my left is Joe Weber.
Hey there.
I don't know if you guys know directions and how they work, but that means Joe is sitting on my right.
Whoa. Yeah.
And Nolan is across from me as well.
I'm starboard.
Yeah, Joe's on my starboard, and Nolan is on my
Bow.
on my bow.
Oh, stern.
my stern.
No, the bow's the front, right?
Yeah.
I watched Pirates of the Caribbean last week, so I basically know everything about ships. I don't know about you, James. I'm feeling a little tired.
Yeah, we've been building our 350Zs for
That's
season
right.
2 of High-Low.
Season 1.5.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Season 1.5. We're finishing the Zs. And we've been doing that for about 3 weeks. So
Yeah.
we've been in a garage, just cranking wrenches.
Really cranking, yeah.
Slamming bolts.
Yeah.
Swerving nuts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really, we're recording this on Valentine's Day, and I
Bucker up. It's V-Day with Donut.
but yeah, I really can't wait for you guys to see the Zs how they are now. We've made a lot of changes.
Yeah, man. Both cars eat, boy.
Yeah.
They eat.
Yeah, they get to the buffet and they're just scooping mac and cheese out of
They
the
go to
plate.
Vegas and they don't even gamble. They just eat.
They get charged because they don't eat everything off their plate. That's how hungry they think they are.
No, but they are very cool, and I can't wait for you guys to see what we've done there. High-low is very taxing, both physically and mentally, but it's one of my favorite things to do. Although I will say, I'm glad that the shoot is basically over at this
We have
point.
to wake up so early to do that show.
Yeah, it was a lot. Anyway, today on Past Gas, we are starting, our 2-part series on the rise and fall, then half rise and fall again of one of the most influential industry figures in automotive history. This is the insane story of one John Delorean.
Every time I read his name, I think, DeLorean.
We are.
Past Gas Podcast. It's about cars. It's not about Fords.
He
a
was
great story.
notorious.
Yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah.
DeLorean.
And we'll see why.
Damn.
Yeah. He didn't just make that stainless steel car,
No, he
There's
did a lot of
more.
other stuff. He was potentially one of the most influential guys in American cars in the 60s and
60s and 70s, yeah. And then things kind of went wrong.
He
But
was
we'll
a-
save that for
a-
episode.
A Wunderkind.
Yeah.
He was
really
a Wunderkind.
Brilliant guy.
He was a boy wonder.
My favorite part about him is his chin implant.
Whoa, Joe.
Sorry to spoil
Don't
things.
spoil
but
that critical
There's
story.
a lot of chin content coming up.
Yeah.
I'd
Yeah,
say this episode is probably 95% chin.
Yeah, we really didn't dig into the car stuff because, everybody knows that, but not a lot of people know about that chin. So we're going to be talking about John Delorean's chin for about 2 hours combined. So strap in. Our source for today's episode is The DeLorean Story by Nick Sutton. All right, so.
Without further ado,
Yeah.
let's dig in.
John Delorean began his career as an engineer on the Packard Car Company design floor. His first major project was focused on improving the Packard Ultramatic 2-speed automatic transmission. He helped design a new version that could shift from low gear into high on its own. Usually, there's manuals and automatics. In the beginning, automatics were push button.
Oh,
So you didn't have to shift, but you still had to operate them.
Mm-hmm.
And a 2-speed automatic sounds that's crazy, right?
Yeah.
But because of the torque converter, it actually worked decently, because if you had 2 speeds in the manual,
Yeah.
that would,
It'd be terrible.
yeah.
Mhm.
But because that torque converter, it would still kind of act like it had more gears
Mhm.
because,
But you had to just press a button to shift.
yeah. So DeLorean's first big project was designing a transmission that could shift on its own in 2 speeds.
Amazing.
Yeah. Good start.
Yeah, I'd say.
For having just started his career, DeLorean was doing pretty all right. But Packard was beginning to suffer financially after World War II. Packard had refused to adapt to the times throughout the war and they continued to produce over-engineered luxury cars that were pretty overpriced. Delorean used this time to really hone in on his craft and develop a particular attention to detail. And after 4 years at Packard, he became the head of research and development. Soon after his promotion, the vice president of engineering at General Motors sought out Delorean and offered him a job.
4 years, that's a fast track exec right there.
Yeah, for sure.
Delorean was given the choice to head any of the 5 divisions at GM.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Like you're a dude who designed a transmission, and then you're head of R&D, and then now you get to choose that's Cadillac, Pontiac, Chevrolet, Oldsmobile, Buick. You get your choice.
Yeah, that's insane.
Which would you choose, James?
At that time, Chevrolet.
Chevrolet?
Or maybe Pontiac, because was Pontiac the fun Chevrolet yet?
No.
Okay. I'd do Pontiac, and then I'd make that happen sooner.
Pontiac was like known for avant-garde stuff at this time, right?
They were, well,
Sorry.
I'm glad you asked, Joe. John chose to take on the Pontiac division as an assistant to the chief engineer. At the time, Pontiac was suffering. It had a reputation of being the old lady division of General Motors.
Damn.
Old ladies can be avant-garde sometimes. You
Yeah.
ever see Elon Musk's mom?
No.
Oh, yeah.
She's like a future space model.
Oh, wow.
Much like the Cybertruck.
Damn, she's cool looking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was a supermodel, I think, at one point.
Yeah.
If my mom was like that, I'd probably make big trucks too. I'd probably be making electric cars right now.
Just to get your mind off of how hot your mom is.
Yeah, I better do
I
something.
gotta keep working.
I better go to the moon. Get away from my hot mommy. My girlfriend is Grimes.
That is the most bizarre
It
thing.
is.
But it kind of works, I guess.
It makes sense to me.
Are they
Yeah.
still
I
dating?
love Elon Musk. They're getting married. She's having his baby.
Whoa.
Yeah.
What do you think they're going to name their child?
Smidgen.
Yeah.
Welcome back to Past Gas, the #1 car goss podcast.
So, yeah, at the time, Pontiac was the old lady division.
The Model B, the baby. They're going to name it
Model B.
Model Baby.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
John viewed his new position at Pontiac as his chance to really prove his worth and revive a dying brand. And he had a pretty good idea of how to do just that.
So what kind of models added to this like granny image?
Like the Tempest and the Le Mans, and they're just boring cars. Like, they're nice, they're well built, but only appealed to people who wanted something that was not safe in a literal sense, but like, oh, better not rock the boat. This is a good car.
Yeah, like
you know?
conservative.
Conservative.
This
very
is like the 50s?
Oh, this is the 50s.
Yeah,
late
so
50s.
you don't want to stand out in the 50s.
Yeah.
You want to just like disappear into the crowd.
Yeah, late 50s, early 60s. And this is at General Motors,
Right.
which is possibly was and still is one of the most like conservative manufacturers in Detroit.
They're
Like,
just like they're successful because they're boring.
right. They appeal to a lot of people because they don't really do, or they weren't doing a lot of stuff that would like shake the boat. They're
Yeah.
like, we're America's brand. I go to work with a tie on. You know?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is a car that I am proud of.
It is a great car. Yeah.
Comes
Not
with-
too proud.
Yeah. Not
Comes
too
with
proud.
Four
Yeah.
wheels.
It's
Well, during the design of the second generation of the Pontiac Tempest, John Delorean had a great idea to breathe some new life into the lineup. He decided that the best direction to take the company was to provide an option for the more performance-minded young people to enjoy.
That's the key.
That's us, baby.
Yeah.
Fist pounds all around,
Oh,
dude.
dude.
Nice.
Performance-minded young people. Yeah. Dude, performance-minded young people sounds like a really sick, like, Japanese drift club.
Yeah.
Performance-minded.
We are the performance-minded
Young
young
people.
people, and we're going to take on Team
Dude,
Midnight.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Performance-minded young people. Let's put that on a shirt.
Performance-minded young. That's pretty good.
really
Don't
cool.
steal that. That's
Don't steal
ours.
that. No, trademark. GM had a policy that limited the engine size in their compact A-body cars to just 5.4 liters, which nowadays is huge.
Yeah, it's humongous.
But DeLorean That boy was a risk taker, and he loved to gamble on himself. So he skirted the GM policy by stuffing the larger 6.4-liter, 325 horsepower Pontiac V8 engine from the Pontiac Catalina into the smaller Pontiac Tempest. The equation of small car plus big engine equals fast. And he called the package GTO, an Italian abbreviation for Gran Turismo Omologato, Grand Tourer Homologated, a term originally used by a little boy named Enzo Ferrari. That's so sick, dude.
Yeah.
Like, what a boss move. Like, he's like, you know what we should do? Freaking engine swap.
But if I remember it correctly, he did it on the low, right?
Yeah.
Like this was like a kind of a secret project that
This
he
was
did.
not approved by GM.
Yeah. And it was just like a high-end performance option that only dealers knew about.
Dude, whenever I hear about these like secret skunkworks projects that went on in, car companies, I'm like, how big is that building? Like, how can you hide the production of a whole freaking car?
It's
Yeah.
funny that you mentioned that because I got sucked into an urban decay exploration channel yesterday, and there's this dude that lives in Detroit, and he goes to the old Packard factory, which is like
sweet.
literally like 40 acres
Whoa.
of just like crumbling buildings.
Whoa.
And he's like walking through, and there's like bricks falling down, like it's just decaying. Then he goes to, in a later video, he goes to the AMC headquarters, which turned into Chrysler, a Chrysler plant at some point. But it's just like massive buildings for like, 10 square blocks.
Yeah, if you're a listener and you work in one of these giant facilities, send us an email.
Yeah. At info at donut.media.
Let's go ahead and say pass gas at donut.media.
Is there past gas email?
There will be
Okay.
after this.
I think this
before
is the
this
second
comes out.
time we've sent that.
Yeah, send us an email at passgas
At
at donut.media and let us know how big these places are. Because I can't wrap my little brain around it.
It's literally impossible to imagine.
It was a major risk to produce the GTO, or at least that's what the conservative GM leadership thought. They weren't as forward-thinking as John Delorean. And he was only allowed to construct about 5,000 GTOs in 1964. You might imagine GM's surprise when over 40,000 people ordered the GTO within the first year.
That's like a huge... Actually, I mean, compared to like other cars at the time, because like everyone was buying cars, that's like a little small. But, I mean, if they only thought 5,000 people...
Right. I mean, it's a super specialty model.
Yeah.
And if it's super secret and when people like hear about it, that's a lot of people. That's a lot of performance-minded young people.
It sure is. Can't count out those performance-minded young people.
You can't. And because of that, the Tempest GTO marked the unofficial beginning of the muscle car era in America, as well as John's full-scale assault on Detroit.
DeLorean,
activate. Dude, we should make the cyber tech RoboCopy DeLorean story, assault on Detroit, DeLorean, assault on
There's like a reimagined history of
Yeah.
DeLorean.
like Abe Lincoln with Vampire Hunter, or Pride and Prejudice with zombies. John Delorean had arrived, and he was gonna mix it up. He remained at Pontiac until February of 1969. Nice. When he was promoted to head of Chevrolet. Almost immediately after his arrival, the Chevy Vega was announced. DeLorean had imagined a value-packed car that was also very stylish, the best of both worlds. And for a little while, the vision held true. The Vega was a good-looking and well-priced small car and fought hard against the German and Japanese competition.
The car-buying public loved the Vega. Cars flew off the lots. During the first model year in 1971, Chevrolet sold over 277,000 of these things. That number nearly doubled the next year to 394,000. The upward swing in sales continued for the next few years, but the car was beginning to earn a bit of a reputation.
What kind of reputation? Oh boy, this sounds bad.
Yeah, the way I did when I said it like
You
this,
talk out of the side of your mouth.
probably not a good reputation.
That's how I knew.
That's a cue to the listener that they should probably pay a little attention at this point. Put down that phone. In the beginning, the Vega was well built, but after about 40,000 of them, production quality of the Vega started to suffer. To keep the price down and make the car more affordable, lots of corners were cut throughout production. The most significant of those corners was the super thin sheet metal that made up the bodywork. The sheet metal was covered with an anti-corrosion primer like any car, but the application was botched, causing very premature rust all over the body. It was common to have to replace the fenders after a single winter, even in states like California, which is like,
we don't have rust here. Yeah, it's never.
We don't have winter here.
Yeah,
dude, it was so cold last week. It was like 60.
yeah. And to make matters worse, the Vega's cooling system was awful. The 2.3-liter inline-4 engine frequently overheated, demolishing cylinders and piston rings. But despite these small issues, the Vega still sold very well, moving almost 2 million units in its 8-year run, a sales rally that soured many owners' opinions of Chevy. So if you make a bad car and you sell a ton of them, that means more people are going to be pissed off at you and think that your cars are pieces of trash.
That's economics 101.
It's economics 101.
Yeah, I took Ec 101, and that was the first thing that, the professor came in, wrote his name on the board in chalk.
Yeah, welcome to economics 101.
Bill Cosby. You make a bad car, Rudy. That's horrible.
Make a bad call, Rudy. Can we do Bill Cosby impressions anymore?
He's in jail.
He's in jail.
He's been
He
punished.
can't get us. He can't come get us.
Where's the pudding?
Yeah, you come home and just in the darkness, there's like a figure eeating like pudding in your
You
kitchen.
just hear pudding sounds. Oh my god. No. I walked right into that one.
The car that promised to be America's small and efficient alternative to foreign cars actually drove buyers straight to foreign cars.
Whoops.
That's the opposite of what we wanted. But still, that didn't matter to GM. As long as they were making money, they thought they were doing great.
I mean, at the end of the day.
Dude, that's economics 102.
Yeah.
As long as you're making money, you're doing great.
My favorite is the Cosworth Vega. That thing is sick.
Yeah,
They made a Cosworth Vega?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's got like gold accents and stuff. It's
I
very
might
cool.
have to find one
The
of those.
track version made like 400 horsepower.
What?
Yeah.
There's
Maybe
a couple
maybe
on
that's wrong.
Facebook.
That's sick.
Yeah.
Really?
We should all buy Cosworth
They
Vegas.
they made 5,000 of them, and like they only sold 3,500, and then the rest were just like rotting on lots forever.
That's
Sucks,
crazy.
dude.
It sucks. As long as GM was making money, they thought they were doing great. And if John Delorean was good at anything, that boy got that paper. Woo! He made money. He had the Midas touch. Whatever he touched undoubtedly turned to gold-plated cars.
Oh boy, I hear a nickname coming on.
He quickly found his position on GM's 14th floor, better known as the executive level.
Ooh.
At the age of 40, Delorean had broken the record for youngest division head ever at GM.
So that tells you like who the people that were running GM were. There were a lot of older guys who had, they were company men. You know, back in the day, like all those guys, they worked for GM all their life, and they worked their way to the top.
They want that watch when they retire.
Yeah, they want that.
They don't want to shake it up.
No.
They want to keep it chill.
But John was a younger dude, even at 40.
Yeah, and he was making them a bunch of money.
Yep.
But those old guys just couldn't help but resent his youthful lifestyle.
Why is that, James?
Or say that's right, James.
Oh, that's right, James. GM tried hard to make their executives blend into the background. Each executive was basically a carbon copy of the next.
Like Agent Smith.
Yeah.
But all just old, stinky white dudes. That can't do anything that Agent Smith can do.
Yeah. They don't even know any karate.
No. You ever try to fire a Desert Eagle with one hand?
No, I would love to though.
It's hard. No, I've never
Maybe at
tried
Joe's
that.
bachelor party.
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh, I knew
let me know now so I can put my order in for 16 Desert Eagles.
Hey guys, I got you all a personalized Desert Eagle and 500 rounds of ammunition.
I mean,
This is
I was looking through
This is my formal RSVP to your bachelor
Oh,
party.
right.
by the way.
It's on the record. It's on the record, Joe. You can't deny it. It's on the record. It's in the world now. It's on the internet. You're coming?
Yeah.
I'm kidding. Oh, that's great.
John, he was a wild and crazy guy. He wore bell bottoms.
Yeah.
Open collared shirts.
Yes.
Showed that chest hair.
Yeah.
And he spent his weekends in California.
Woo!
You know, that's where we all party.
Yeah, John Delorean loved to party.
Yeah, he was the antithesis of the typical GM exec.
Hey, I'm going to Temecula this weekend. Care to follow me?
We're going to Spakcha. A Forbes article about DeLorean puts it the best by stating he understood something other auto industry executives haven't yet grasped. Automobiles were just as much about style as they were about nuts and bolts.
Well put.
Great quote. Unlike a typical GM exec, DeLorean wore trendy clothes. He had that trendy lifestyle. He underwent plastic surgery to shape his face.
Yes.
Cool guy.
He bought a stronger jaw and was focused on his...
That's the weirdest way of saying they got a chin implant.
Yeah. And he was very focused on his appearance, as he realized that his appearance directly impacted the marketing of his cars. All in all, he was as close to being a rock star as an exec could be.
Hey, have you guys seen John lately?
Yeah, he looks like Jay Leno.
Does his chin look bigger to you guys?
Did he add a butt to it?
Yeah, he didn't have a chin butt before, right?
No, come on. Like, he definitely right?
I don't know. I saw him open a bottle with it the other day.
He opened the fridge in the break room the other day and it hit his chin and it sounded like he dropped a fork.
If I was going to get a chin implant, it'd be like a diffuser to make me more like aerodynamic when I'm running really fast.
It looked like the top of the Supra.
Like the front of an F1 car. Hey, here comes Nolan. The one thing that GM could not get behind was Johnny Boy's love life. In 1954, John married his high school sweetheart, Elizabeth Higgins. But in 1969, they divorced so he could spend more time on the West Coast.
As you do.
Listen, baby, I know you've been married for 15 years, but you're really getting in the way of me spending more time on the other side of the country.
Yeah, Eat LA is next week, and I can't.
He quickly remarried after only a few months to actress and model Kelly Harmon. Kelly would later become a prominent spokeswoman for Tic Tacs. She was only 19 at the time of their marriage, a fact the couple hid when they added a few years to her age when the marriage was announced. Johnny Boy was 44. Unfortunately, John's marriage to actress and model Kelly Harmon didn't last very long, and another divorce was filed in 1972. But fortunately, John quickly found love and married. And he married actress and model Christina Ferrara just 1 year later. Now,
This guy doesn't seem problematic at all.
Yeah, this guy's not a crazy psychopath. Christina had recently been rated as the #1 model in America by somebody.
by John Delorean.
By John Delorean. Hey, she's the #1 model in America next to the Pontiac Solstice. John's quickly rotating marriage status stoked resentment from his peers at GM. But each time John Delorean was criticized, he would remind them just how much money he was making the company.
Hey, John, you getting married again?
Yeah, but I just made $16 billion for this place.
Damn it.
In a world where money equals success, DeLorean was a successful man.
His marriage to the top actress and model in the country wasn't the only life-changing event in 1972. That same year, he was appointed to Vice President of Car and Truck Production for the entire GM Corporation.
Dang.
So he's the big dog.
Mm-hmm.
He's running things.
He doesn't stay on the porch.
Nuh-uh.
He runs at the head of the pack.
Yeah, if you can't run with the big dogs.
Stay on the porch, pup.
We had a big dog store in Atascadero.
Yeah, duh.
And I think I made my mom take me there once. I don't remember buying anything.
Yeah.
Mom, take me to the big dogs.
I want to see the big dogs. I want to run with the big dogs.
I'm just over here sitting on the porch.
Big Dogs is a surprisingly approachable company. Like, you'll tweet at them and they'll tweet back at you.
Yeah, have you tweeted? Big Dogs? Yeah.
Yeah, our friend Matt Cordova is like a huge Big Dogs fan. Has like all these vintage Big Dogs shirts.
Should we try and get sponsored by Big Dogs?
Yes.
Yo,
yes.
Big Dogs. Donut, Pass Gas the podcast, anything on Donut.
Oh my God.
We would love to get we would love to work with you guys. Hit us up. I guess on Instagram.
Yeah.
Yeah, tag us on Instagram.
Pass gas. We want to run with the big dogs.
We love your product.
We love your product.
I love the ones where it's just like the big, not like buff, but like big dog.
Yeah, big, like us.
Yeah. And he's just like, you got a problem with me? Like, take it up with the boss or something like that. Like, me.
My favorite part is that most of the dogs are wearing sunglasses.
Yeah, dude.
I like to think that the artist is like, I'm really not great at drawing dogs' eyes.
They have like human eyes.
Yeah, the eyes are kind of weird. Can we do something about that? They're like really like so much more detailed than the rest of the drawing. Just like these perfect
Like
human
eyelashes.
They're following me.
I really love the dog on aggressive rollerblades grinding down a handrail. But why do the eyes have to be photorealistic?
Sorry. To collect myself. The next logical step for John was to jockey for the president of GM, but he didn't exactly want that.
That's the thing he does, where it lets us know that something's coming up.
John knew GM's tragic flaw. He saw that GM would keep doing the same thing and producing the same car year after year as long as it was making money.
And he was right.
Yeah, that sounds like a pretty good business.
Yeah.
While they would ignore the growing small car markets dominated by companies such as Volkswagen. He knew that in the end, foreign cars were smaller and better than the cheap, predictable rubbish being produced by GM.
A lot of John's success came from his blatant disobedience of GM's orders. It sort of became a catch-22 for GM and himself. While the company hated when he would go out of his way to do what he wanted against their wishes, they also loved that sweet, sweet cheddar cheese that he raked in for them.
He's like the original disruptor.
But this time, he would push his luck a bit too far.
You know, hearing this, like, I really wonder what would happen if he had worked at Chrysler instead of GM. Because, I mean, like Chrysler's whole thing is that they weren't Ford or GM. They were smaller.
Yeah.
And thus they would take a lot more risks with their designs. Like, their muscle cars are just, in my opinion at least, way crazier than the ones being
Like
put up
the
at
Superbird.
Yeah, Superbird, like just putting huge engines and I mean, John would have fit right in with them. And that's a pretty interesting alternate timeline to think of.
That's like we can make that movie like an alternate history.
Whoa.
And like 4 people would like it.
Yeah.
Spend $200 million on it.
In 1973, John was in a bit of a dark place in his life. He had just divorced from his second wife, actress and model Kelly Harmon, and he was growing more and more frustrated with the overall quality of GM's cars. Delorean was set to give a confidential speech to the top 700 GM executives at the Greenbrier Hotel GM Management Conference in West Virginia.
Yo, dude, you going to the Greenbrier Hotel?
I've been to the Greenbrier Hotel.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was it like?
The Greenbrier?
Yeah.
It's insane. It's where they have the bunker underground that if we got in a nuclear war, they would ship Congress there.
Wow.
Yeah. That's crazy.
And you did shots down there or something?
Yeah, I did shots.
Yeah.
DeLorean was set to give a confidential speech to the top 700 GM executives at the Greenbrier Hotel in West Virginia for the GM Management Conference. His entire presentation revolved around a single topic: the poor quality of GM's cars. The speech was extraordinarily critical of the entire company, and he planned to go face to face with the people responsible.
Taking it to the man. Even though he is kind of the man.
He is the man.
Yeah, but he's taking it to the other
The
man.
other men.
Yeah.
It's like, we got to be better, boys. John's staff insisted that he tone down his rhetoric, which he begrudgingly accepted.
We took their advice.
DeLorean did not like the feeling of being censored, and soon enough, an unedited copy of his speech leaked into the newspaper.
Uh-oh.
How did that happen?
John, I don't know how it ended up in there.
10 miles.
I don't know how the newspaper got me speech.
Hey guys, Nolan here. I love listening to music and podcasts. I love taking them on the go, and that's where this week's sponsor, Raycon, that's where they come in, okay? They got wireless earbuds. They're discreet, powerful, and they've got great sound. And Raycon's latest model, the E25, is their best one yet, with 6 hours of playtime, seamless Bluetooth pairing, more bass, and a more compact design that gives you a nice noise-isolating fit. Seriously, they cancel so much noise from my neighbors that I forget that I'm not sitting alone in my apartment by myself. And for about half the price of other wireless earbuds, they cannot be beat. My Raycons automatically pair with whatever device I'm using, which is super convenient. But my favorite part has to be how long the battery lasts between charging. It seems like forever. And the case charges them up to 3 full times before you have to plug it in again. It is a genius design. I really, really love this product. Now's the time to get the latest and greatest from Raycon. Get 15% off your order at buyraycon.com/gas. That's buyraycon.com/gas for 15% off Raycon wireless earbuds. Buyraycon.com/gas. Seriously, I love having the Raycon sponsorship. I use their product every day, and it's a really great product that I'm proud to endorse. So please support the companies that support us and get yourself some Raycon wireless earbuds. They are great. After an internal investigation, it was determined that DeLorean had leaked his own speech.
I mean,
needed an investigation.
He wouldn't, right?
No, unless that chin is gained sentience and control over DeLorean's brain. We're going to take over the world, see?
You're not the boss anymore, John. I'm the boss of this body.
The chin is just James Cagney.
Chin DeLorean.
John DeLorean.
Yeah, so he leaked his own speech. He wanted the world to know how he truly felt. Most of the time, when John took a risk, it paid off, but this was not one of those.
Oh my God.
times.
Let's tone that down.
Shortly after the leak.
How will we know?
Yeah.
How will we know, Joe? How will we know that something big is coming up?
Shortly after the leak, John Delorean was forced to resign from his position at General Motors. The brilliant salesman he was, though, John managed to take what would have been a very embarrassing and potentially career-ending move and spin himself into being the hero of it all. He told the New York Times that he wouldn't let his genius go to waste at GM, as they had already had, quote, too many bean counters and not enough engineers. On top of that, he stated that, quote, even at $650,000 a year, if the job is not satisfying, you do something else.
Damn.
That's something that only someone making $650K a year can say.
Dude, freaking back then, how much is that now?
That would be
I'm
73.
guessing $1.3 million.
Yeah, I think it's safe.
$3.9 million.
Shoot.
A
You
year.
making that a year? Ooh.
That's some sauce, baby. Ooh, that's some sweet sauce.
I think I'd probably put up with the bean counters if I was making that.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, so after all the dust settled, DeLorean came out on top in the eyes of the public. Throughout his time at GM, DeLorean had always dreamt of what he called the, quote, ethical car. He wanted to create a car that was safe, long-lasting over 25 years, and sustainable.
Nice.
Forward-thinking guy. The car of his dreams was going to be, quote, eternal. He also dreamt of building an exotic and contemporary-looking sports car for the masses.
That's a lot of things rolled into one, huh?
Yeah. It's going to be everything. You want a fast car? You got it. Sustainable car? You got it. Affordable car? Well, you got it.
We'll try.
Yeah.
On October 24th, 1975, the DeLorean Motor Company was officially founded in Detroit, 2 years after John's departure from General Motors. His primary motivation was to show GM what they had missed out on by firing him, which is very healthy.
I mean, they had like 20 years of him, you know.
Yeah.
It's not like
They know.
they know.
Yeah. The ability to have complete control over his own creative outlets was just one benefit to starting his own company. DeLorean wanted to make the best car possible that had the least environmental impact while still being the best bang for your buck for customers. The DeLorean was going to be able to do everything.
You know, James, if there's one thing I've learned here at Donut, it's that when you make a car that does everything, it never goes wrong.
Yeah. It always does everything well.
Yeah, perfectly.
DMC really had two founders, John Delorean and Bill Collins. Bill Collins had worked with John back at Pontiac and was a key player in the development of the GTO.
John trusted Bill Collins.
And John immediately focused his ambitions on securing funds for the company, leaving the development of DMC's first car to in the competent hands of Billy Collins.
That may sound like an unfair division of labor, but securing funding for the company was equally as difficult as developing a car from scratch.
We'll hear about that a little bit later.
The only real asset the company had in the beginning was John's prior experience at GM.
It's what you call an intangible asset. You don't know how much it's worth.
Wow.
I learned that literally yesterday.
Oh, nice.
I did.
You watching TED Talks again?
No,
Again.
my lady's in the biz. She knows business words.
So I'd say we all have intangible
Assets.
Assets,
Mm-hmm.
right? We
Yeah.
bring to Donut.
Yeah, totally. Like, you can do more pull-ups than anyone I've ever seen in my life.
Dude, and after I start rock climbing more, I'm going to be like climbing all over the office.
I cannot wait.
Starting your own car company was basically impossible. The last car company that was ever capable of making it without going under was Chrysler in the 1920s, and even they had to receive a bailout. While John sold his confidence and charm, Bill designed the prototype that would become the Dmc-12. When it came to the design of the Dmc-12, its most notable feature may be the distinctive stainless steel body. Unpainted stainless steel was used because it never rust, and DeLorean intended to reach his 25-year survival mark by building a car that could withstand the elements.
It was designed by Giorgetto Giugiaro.
Yeah. Who also, I believe, designed the Scirocco.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
and the Golf.
Yeah.
Mark I Golf.
And a lot of other cars, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, he's literally the most influential car designer of the 20th century.
Yeah, he's my favorite.
And they called it the DMC-12 because they wanted to offer it for $12,000.
Whoa. The car was also powered by a V6 engine developed by Peugeot, Renault, and Volvo known as the PRV, making a whopping 130 horsepower.
Almost 2 years after founding the company in 1976, DeLorean unveiled the first prototype of the Dmc-12 Delorean. The press ate it up.
Ooh, they're just eating at that buffet.
Like spaghetti,
nom,
baby. Detroit reviewers even viewed the car as being as significant as the Ford Model A.
Wow.
People were excited, and investors were jumping on board. But unfortunately for Johnny D, they still couldn't secure enough funding. But fortunately for Johnny D, they were able to get help from an unlikely source. Okay, let's rewind a bit. The late 1960s marked the beginning of a period in Ireland known as the Troubles, more widely known as the Northern Ireland Conflict. In 1921, Ireland was released from British control and partitioned into two separate states. Northern Ireland, which was majority Protestant and identified as British, and Ireland, which was majority Catholic and
Not British.
not British.
Irish.
Irish. Northern Ireland remained under British control and resulted in a divide between Catholics and Protestants. The Irish claimed that the borders of Northern Ireland were created primarily for gerrymandering purposes and that Northern Ireland was an illegitimate and undemocratic state.
Do you know that Protestants drink Jameson and Catholics drink Powers whiskey?
Huh. I guess I got to drink Powers.
Are you Catholic?
I think so, yeah. Fast forward 50 years. Tensions between the two groups had continued to rise. In 1969, riots began in Northern Ireland.
Appropriate use.
Yeah, great.
The divide between the Protestants and Catholics had reached its boiling point, and things were starting to get messy.
A young Bono.
No.
Without going too far into the topic, because it is a very complicated conflict, and I'm not very smart, and this is a card podcast, things were getting pretty tense. British troops were brought in to help calm the riots, but that just made things worse. The IRA was engaging in guerrilla-style attacks and bombings against both civilians and soldiers. A majority of the conflict was centered around the cities of Belfast and Derry. At this point in time, Northern Ireland was a rough place. And while looking for governments to invest in his car, John Delorean kept striking out. No country was going to invest their capital into a company that had no guaranteed return, except for Northern Ireland. The British-controlled government of Northern Ireland invested over $140 million into the Delorean Motor Company for them to build their factory in Belfast.
No one else would go to Belfast because it was such a dangerous place to be. In fact, the area's extreme violence scared off any industrialists. But Delorean was desperate to make his dream come true, so when the Northern Ireland government offered Delorean money and land, he jumped at the chance. John offered something to Northern Ireland that they needed more than anything else: jobs. The unemployment rate in Northern Ireland was crazy high at the time, averaging at nearly 40%. So the government gave him loans, grants, and more land. The only catch was that John had to train an inexperienced workforce, build a factory, and have cars roll off the assembly line within 2 years.
That's I can't do anything in 2 years.
At this point, John had nothing more than a hand-built prototype of the Dmc-12. He was nowhere near prepared to actually start selling cars within such a short time, so a major redesign of his factory structure was necessary. John brought on legendary name in the car world at the time, Mr. Colin Chapman. You might know him as the founder and engineer of Lotus Cars. A man who dominated Formula One and was building some of the most advanced race cars at the time.
Now, the partnership with Lotus actually started out pretty awkwardly. People like Bill Collins, who had been an integral part in the development of the DMC-12 prototype, were slowly phased out as their duties were just passed directly over to Lotus's engineering team. Colin Chapman was willing to do some fishy things financially that Bill and his team weren't very comfortable with. When Bill discovered that John was paying crazy amounts of money to an unexplained company, GPD Services, Bill called it quits and tendered his resignation. Bill Collins resigned from the company despite practically creating their entire car. This was the beginning of John Delorean's money over everything mindset.
Things started out pretty well in Northern Ireland for Delorean. The entire factory was a social experiment of sorts. Inside the DMC factory was one of the first times in a long time that both Catholics and Protestants could be seen working together in Northern Ireland.
I take a shot of Powers.
And I take a shot of Jameson.
Okay.
You must accept that the Pope is a direct ear to God.
I'll never do that.
I'll kill you, you Protestant bastard!
This demonstrated that a successful mixed workforce really was possible and that people were able to work together for a common interest. If you ask most of the workers at the DeLorean factory, they would all say the same thing. It was the best job they ever had. And it's true. The factory floor became a symbol of national unity, and people were excited for the future of the company.
One thing that stood out about John, besides his chin, was his calmness. He was building a factory basically in the middle of a war zone. You'd imagine he might be a little bit stressed out, right?
Mm-hmm.
But not John Delorean. The world could be collapsing around him, and he wouldn't even blink, which was a good trait to have because, in fact, the world was about to be collapsing around him.
That's
In January 1981, the first wave of DMC cars rolled off the assembly line. Immediately, the car was struck with quality control issues and became a product warranty nightmare. Literally everything on the car broke. On top of it all, the Dmc-12 was nothing like the car DeLorean had promised. It sucked. It cost more than a Corvette, but it was slower than a Corvette. It handled like a truck and had a pretty unreliable engine to propel it down the streets. The only innovative aspect of the entire thing lied purely on the stainless steel body and weird gull-wing doors.
They are cool.
I don't think
They're
it got mentioned, but the PRV engine wasn't the first choice. They wanted like a turbo 4-cylinder,
That would have been cool.
and then they were looking at other. I think they even, because when Con Chapman got brought in and he had a relationship with Ford, they were thinking about bringing like a Ford engine in.
Like a Cosworth or something, maybe?
No,
Oh.
not really. But yeah, this PRV engine was like garbage, and they were like, okay, it's cheap, whatever, just put it in.
Do you know why they put the engine in the back? That's always been a strange choice to me.
No.
If you want to know
Yeah,
more
no.
about the actual tech of the car, you can check out the episode of Up to Speed on the
Yeah,
DMC-12
That's a good
Yeah.
throw.
on our YouTube.
Nice.
It's hosted by me.
Oh,
It's written by me.
No, I don't think it is. The only innovative accent. It wasn't what the people were promised, and on top of it, it couldn't have come at a worse time. 1981 also marked a pretty major economic recession in the U.S., so the market for these weird cars basically evaporated.
When your car starts having quality controls issues, what do? Well, there are a few options. You can try and fix it, or you can pull a Ford Pinto and just keep paying the damages because it's too much work to fix it. John discovered a third option. He decided against fixing the production issues and doubled down on factory output. The outcome was something no one could have predicted. Unsold cars backing up on the lot. There are some pretty incredible pictures of warehouses just stacked full of unwanted cars. Big thanks to Simply Safe for sponsoring this episode of Past Gas. Simply Safe home security is like getting a commercial-grade, enterprise-level security, but for your own home. Think about the security Fortune 500 companies use, okay? I think about that stuff all the time. I'm thinking about how to get in there. They need to know that police are going to be on the scene immediately should anything go wrong, and this is exactly the kind of security you're going to get with Simply Safe. You might say, hey, my doors are safe, Nolan, but what if a hamburglar tries to smash through my window and steal my burgers? Well, look, that's a good point, all right? Hamburglars are very cunning. Well, Simply Safe has entry, motion, and glass break sensors inside, as well as outdoor cameras and doorbell alerts to let you know someone's trying to get in and steal your burgers. If there's a break-in, Simply Safe uses real video evidence to give police an eyewitness account of the crime. And that means police dispatch up to 350% faster than for a normal burglar alarm. Please go to simplysafe.com/gas today and get free shipping on your order plus a 60-day money-back guarantee. That's simplysafe.com/gas to save on home security today. simplysafe.com/gas. Thank you so much, Simply Safe, for sponsoring this episode.
When we last met up with John Delorean, he had decided that instead of fixing the awful Dmc-12 stainless steel sports car, big air quotes on sports car, by the way, that he would just build more cars instead.
Hey, I just thought of a really good, sorry, this is sidetracking already. A really good episode for this, or a title for this episode is He's Just a Man, DeLorean.
Whoa, that is very good.
Yeah. Man, let me write some Star Wars jokes in there real quick.
Yeah, man, that's a really good reference to that show that came out 4 months ago.
It's still huge with SEO, dude.
Baby Yoda returns.
But why would John make such a bad business decision? Well, the DeLorean company was hemorrhaging money, and they knew from the very beginning that the funding they had been given by the Northern Irish government would only pay enough to get the first car out the door.
Uh-oh.
And being the risk taker that he was, John decided to try and exploit a clause in their contract that promised him more aid if he increased the number of factory jobs.
Clever.
After all, jobs were viewed as the be-all, end-all in Northern Ireland at the time. What he didn't take into account was a shift in British politics.
Several months after the initial groundbreaking of the Delorean Motor Company plant, Margaret Thatcher's Conservative Party came to power in Britain. A major characteristic of the English Conservative Party at the time was their disapproval of the government investment into private industry. Margaret Thatcher specifically viewed the government's investment in the Delorean factory as a bad deal for the British government and immediately cut any further investment into the company. John Delorean thought that more jobs equaled more money, but Thatcher didn't see it that way. Delorean was running out of cash and heading straight for insolvency. His back was against the wall. But you wouldn't have known it by looking at him.
Handsome.
Yeah. He had to somehow partially pay back the British government as well as prove financial viability, or else the government would seize all of his assets and dissolve the company. He began searching for outside funding, and never losing his signature level of chill, he would frequently walk the factory floor and promise all his workers that he had just secured more funding towards the factory, despite being over $175 million in debt. This strategy held until mid-October of 1982.
Because on October 19th, 1982, news broke that John Delorean had been arrested after meeting with undercover FBI and DEA agents. He was charged by the U.S. government with trafficking cocaine.
What?
Yeah.
The guy with the chin implant and the good hair and always partying in California?
Unbelievable.
That guy?
Yeah. The U.S. government stacked 8 drug charges against him. And of course, Delorean pled not guilty. But it was going to be a tough fight. Mm-hmm. The feds had hours of video showing John planning investments in illegal cocaine trafficking. The video they nabbed him with showed John sitting in front of a briefcase filled with 59 pounds of cocaine, valued at $6.5 million, reaching in and grabbing some while claiming that this is better than gold.
Pretty damning.
Yeah.
That dude loved gold, too. He made some not solid gold DeLoreans.
The gold-plated
ones.
They
Yeah.
sold that in Sky Mall, correct?
Yeah.
No, it was
Macy's.
yeah, it was like a JCPenney or one of those
Yeah.
like Christmas catalogs,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a cross promotion with MasterCard.
That's so hard.
We covered that on Bumper to Bumper, didn't we?
We did. Check out that episode of Bumper to Bumper on the gold-plated DeLorean. The case against John Delorean was extraordinarily strong, at least from the public's point of view. And really, it was the public's view on the case that mattered more than anything to the government.
The Delorean case was about as complicated as you'd expect. As far as the public was aware, this was a case of a desperate man doing a desperate thing to try and keep his company alive. But this case has so many layers to it, so we will start from the beginning of the case built against John Delorean.
In the early 1980s, President Reagan announced a major expansion to one of Nixon's policies, the war on drugs. Whatever policies Nixon had in place, Reagan cranked up to 11, and government organizations were excited to demonstrate the true benefits of such intense policies. At this point in time, confidential informants were actually able to make a living yearly income purely by being an informant. That's a professional snitch. And
That's
on top
crazy.
of it all, cooperating could also help reduce prison sentences.
What would your snitch name be?
I wouldn't be a snitch. I'd never fucking snitch. Moot
You'd be
point. Jimmy. Moot point. Move on.
Little Jimmy Pump.
Confidential informant Jim Hoffman was no exception to trying to get the most out of his position. Jim Hoffman was picked up for drug charges a few years earlier and conveniently was also John Delorean's neighbor in California. He reported to his FBI handlers that he had spoken with Delorean, who had approached Jim suggesting a deal. And on September 4th, 1982, a meeting between the two at the L'Enfant Plaza was recorded by the FBI.
John was promised that a $2 million investment would net around $15 million straight back to him. But at the time, Delorean didn't even have $1 million to invest in this cocaine stuff. But there was the possibility that he could put up some collateral. The FBI wanted to catch John, so they staged a meeting with an undercover operative playing a banker who could secure a loan for him. The FBI was going to great lengths to make a deal that was frankly impossible for Delorean, but it was in the FBI's interest to make this bust.
Hi, I'm Agent Moneybags. I mean Mr. Moneybags. Would you like some of my money?
For cocaine?
Specifically for cocaine.
The U.S. government was attempting to merge the cases of Delorean and one Morgan Hetrick, a suspected cocaine importer. This would give the government the best chance of taking both of them down at the same time. That way, the government got their big bust in the name of the war on drugs, and Jim Hoffman, the snitch, would get some more money for providing, quote, valuable information. After hours and hours of recorded meetings, John actually hadn't given the FBI anything to work with, so they cranked up the pressure. Each party had something they wanted from the other. The informant wanted his lifestyle, Delorean wanted to save his company, and the feds wanted a major bust. The feds wanted John to put up the payment, but all he could offer them was worthless stock in his failing company. But that was enough for the FBI to close the deal.
That's such a weird, like, buying cocaine with stocks is about as sad as you can get.
It's a horrible case because they're not, like, they're just going to move forward with this now and really just try to make this happen. But as we'll see.
Nah, don't start that again.
Joe does not like that.
Joe hates foreshadowing. I don't get it. It's literary.
It's
You're a
not
writer.
foreshadowing just
It's
because you're talking
foreshadowing,
out of the
dude.
side of your mouth.
All right.
Yeah,
That's the
I
only,
think you might like it.
that's the only time I'll do that, Joe. I promise. In the middle of the meeting with an alleged drug dealer, an undercover FBI agent placed a briefcase containing 59 pounds of cocaine on the table. John agreed to put up the, quote, payment for the product, and that sealed the deal. Moments later, John Delorean was arrested and placed into custody under 8 charges of drug trafficking cocaine in the U.S. The evidence was overwhelming against John. Kinda. He was sitting in front of a suitcase of cocaine. I mean, it's obvious, right? Well,
During the trial, it was brought to the court's attention that Jim Hoffman, the informant,
snitch.
had actually been the one who contacted John in the first place. He heard that Delorean needed money and saw an opportunity to help get his sentence reduced for his own cocaine trafficking
What?
charge.
Okay.
I know, dude. This guy sucks. This raised one major question. How far can the government go to lure a desperate man? In the days before the trial's conclusion, John said simply that it's in the hands of the Lord now. On August 16th, 1984, Delorean was found not guilty on all charges. It was determined that the FBI and DEA had unfairly targeted and entrapped Delorean by targeting a desperate man who would do anything to secure funding. They had forced him to make decisions he never would have unless they had been pushed upon him. Despite the acquittal, it was too late. Delorean's reputation was permanently damaged, and his company went into bankruptcy within a month of his initial arrest.
I think you probably had a pretty good lawyer, huh?
Sounds like it.
That's such a great ending though to that whole thing. I mean, not a great ending. Sorry.
No, I mean it's
a great result.
vindication for John. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like so funny that the FBI probably spent millions of dollars on this, and then it just didn't work.
Well, they were forcing. You can't force.
Yeah,
But just such a weird thing, and you wonder if like the GM dudes had anything to do with it.
Oh,
You know, just like let's shut him down.
Shut him down. He's over there in Northern Ireland.
You know, like I'm sure they were pissed off at him. And the big three, it's not the first time the big three's tried to crush a small car company. So I think the government and the big three are pretty close. I think that GM orchestrated the John Delorean framing.
Do you have any evidence of this?
It's all conjecture at this point. It's theory, conjecture.
Well, let's move on. While he was now free, the arrest and the trial had cost him everything. John's wife, actress and model Christina Ferrari, filed for divorce only 3 days after the trial ended.
but luckily he found another actress/model.
His reputation was in the can. When he was asked about his future after the trial, he responded, quote, "Would you buy a used car from me?"
Damn.
But things weren't over for Delorean. Shortly after the trial, it was revealed that Delorean had struck a deal with Colin Chapman and that mysterious GPD services organization that we heard about last time, years earlier. Delorean's former partner, Bill Collins, had noticed some financial indiscrepancies in the contracts, which led to him quitting. You know, he was like, this is fishy. I'm just going to get out of here, but y'all doing something weird with the money.
Yeah, Bill doesn't want any blood on his hands.
Bill's like the only smart person in the story.
Yeah, and he got out, which was nice.
For each... Whoa.
Was that a hiccup?
I don't know. Second puberty hitting me. For each $1 Delorean paid Lotus, another $1 would go into this unknown entity, GPD Services, based in Geneva.
$17.65 million had been funneled from the DMC partnership into GPD Services, and it disappeared. Delorean's explanation was that GPD acted as a corporate middleman, but really, it was a shell company.
Uh-oh.
As it turns out, John had made a very lucrative deal with Chapman. After securing money from investors, John sent $17.65 million to GPD, after which Chapman would take and funnel the money through other European businesses and banks. Once that was completed, the money was split between the two of them, and a portion was deposited back into John's personal bank account. This was, of course, fraud.
Aw.
And it allowed John Delorean to convert his investors' money into his own.
Well, who's being the snitch now?
Yeah, dude, why is the only problem this guy has is that he surrounds himself with snitches.
And so, on September 21st, 1985, Delorean was indicted on charges of tax evasion and defrauding his investors. And now, he had to not only account for where that $17.65 million went, but also explain why $9.1 million of it magically appeared back in his personal bank account. To prove that the money was legitimate, John provided multiple loan letters stating that the money received was a loan with a distant expiration date. On top of that, all those loan letters were between Delorean and Chapman with no other witnesses. Fortunately for Delorean, though, Colin Chapman had died from a heart attack a few years earlier, so there was no one who could prove him wrong.
And that's kind of a conspiracy too, right? That he didn't actually die.
Oh yeah, he was shipwrecked or something, right? No, that was another guy.
Well, there's like so much cloudy shit around his death. Yeah.
We should do an episode on Colin Chapman.
Yeah.
Write that down. Write that down. All right, so there was no one who could prove Delorean wrong, except for his wife.
Ooh, no, she wouldn't. No way. Ferrara?
Testimonies from his now ex-wife, actress and model, Christina Ferrara, revealed that she witnessed him between acting and modeling jobs. She had witnessed him one night in a large closet forging the documents. She claimed to have seen him typing documents and forging signatures while wearing gloves to avoid leaving oils or prints. She then claimed that he artificially aged the documents by shining them with a sun lamp.
Very
And
thorough.
then she got back to her modeling and acting.
Yeah. John, what are you doing in the large closet? Why are you wearing gloves, John?
Why aren't you in the small closet?
You've never worn gloves in the large
Yeah.
closet, John. What's up?
What? Your hands aren't oily right now. They're usually so oily.
Another investigation tried to find out what happened to this $17.65 million. It was immediately discovered that GPD was no more than just a P.O. box in a residential neighborhood in Geneva. J. Alex, the forensic accountant in charge of the case, said that on that first day of the trial, John walked in and told him, quote, "I was talking about you on the radio, but I think I got your name wrong. Is there one H in shithead or two?"
Hell yeah, that guy
that's tight.
rules. Big, just bell bottoms, cool hair, big chin.
Calls you a shithead.
Calls you a shithead.
So yeah,
in like a funny way. This dude's like on trial, and he's like in the car.
that's
on the way.
that cool demeanor, you know?
Yeah.
If someone said that to me, I'd be like, it's not sit head. What are you talking about?
Somehow, Delorean had got away with it again. But in the end, it didn't even matter how many times he won. His career and his life were destroyed at this point. No one would ever hire John Delorean again. Just like Icarus, who flew too close to the sun, Delorean's meteoric rise ended with him catastrophically plummeting back to Earth.
I think getting away with it again is a little misleading because one of them, for sure, he did. The other one was kind of entrapment.
Yeah.
Well, 100% entrapment.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, that was worded wrong. He didn't get away with anything the first time.
No.
No. Yeah.
Well, I mean, he kind of messed up. He didn't like mess up as bad as the FBI said he did, but he was still like at the meeting.
That's true.
Yeah.
He was still like, he
did.
still picked up a bunch of cocaine and was like, this is worth more than gold. Like,
yeah.
they have that on tape.
Yeah, it's pretty unsanitary. I can see why that's a big
Right. The circumstances around it were really shady, and he didn't get popped for it, but like he was
in like 8 meetings.
Yeah, yeah. He took 8 meetings trying to trade stock in his company for cocaine.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. I
Wow.
rescind my.
Yeah, when you put it like that, how did they not?
right. Yeah. Great lawyer. In 1985, 2 years after DMC officially went under, the greatest thing that could have ever happened to the DMC-12 happened. The DeLorean made its silver screen debut in the film Back to the Future. Woo! If it wasn't for that movie, the DMC-12 would be nothing more than a failed sports car from another failed, sometimes pompous, asshole. But in Back to the Future, the DMC car was a beautiful image of freedom and adventure. It showed to a wide audience of people who had never known or cared about the DeLorean trials a beautiful, futuristic stainless steel car. It finally allowed the DeLorean to be immortalized as the hero car John always wanted it to be. On July 25th, 1985, DeLorean wrote a fan letter to Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale, the screenwriters of Back to the Future. In the letter, he wrote, "I was particularly pleased that the DeLorean motor car was all but immortalized in the film, and want to thank all those responsible. Thanks again for continuing my dream in such a positive fashion." Now DeLorean was certain his car would live on forever in the heart of every sci-fi loving kid for the rest of eternity.
I mean, he's right.
Yeah.
You know?
100%,
Yeah.
dude.
There's still, you go to any DeLorean meet, there's like 17 that look like that.
Yeah. It's like that car is on a million t-shirts and
Yeah.
a million bedroom walls.
And it was almost a refrigerator.
Oh,
yeah.
that's right.
in Back
Yeah.
to the Future, yeah. But they didn't want to encourage kids
Yeah.
to get trapped in refrigerators because, like, at the time in the 80s, that was like a big public scare. Like, don't let your kids get trapped in an abandoned refrigerator.
Yeah. What were they like? How
There was like an episode of Punky Brewster about it.
Oh my god.
Whoa.
On a very special episode of Punky
Yeah.
Brewster. Hey! I'm in the fridge. I thought it would be cold in here. It's not cold.
But if we're being real, like hide and seek, that's the
It's
best
the ultimate.
spot
Yeah.
to hide.
I mean, you do have to like take all like the shelves out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then people are like, why is the milk on the counter?
Why does it smell like rotting bodies?
When I was little, me and my cousin took all the shelves and food out of the refrigerator and put my other cousin in it. And his mom got so mad.
Yeah, I can imagine. 80s were a weird time, huh? Fridge
Yeah.
scares,
Mhm.
satanic cult scares.
Yeah.
What were they doing? What's up with that?
90s had their fair share of cult.
Yeah.
shows here.
Mm-hmm. I like Colts.
Yeah, you're in one, right?
Yep.
You're with you're going to Jared's.
Yeah, I'm in Jared Leto's Colt.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Just wear robes all the time.
Yeah, we just wear
Let us-
robes all the time and listen to Gone in 60 Seconds.
So do you think that
That's what they do.
Gone in 60 Seconds to Mars.
do you think he's the best Joker?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, what? Dude,
Oh, you're
name
the-
a better Joker than Jared Leto.
He's legend. Oh, Mark Hamill actually.
Yeah, right.
Mark
Dude.
Hamill's way better. Mark
All right.
Hamill's the best Joker.
Name a Joker that's more twisted.
Than
Than
Jared
Jared
Leto.
That's true.
Yeah, there no other Joker even has any tattoos.
Yeah.
So,
you got me there.
I mean, what is even... And his teeth are gross
yeah, and like
when he's the Joker.
With their silver, the like fronts that he wears.
I think so.
yeah, those are cool.
Yeah,
I like when
it's
he
twisted.
My
Yeah.
favorite part of that movie is like I thought it was really cool when he put the knives on the floor and laid in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
None of the other Jokers even have, like, girlfriends. He has a girlfriend.
Yeah, and she's hot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dang, you're right.
Jared Leto's the
Can I
coolest.
come to that meeting this weekend?
Dude, yeah, you can come. We'd love to have you. For being such a loud and important personality, DeLorean's life after his trial was relatively quiet. He remarried and became a devout born-again Christian. 15 years later, in 2000, he filed for personal bankruptcy after over 40 legal battles regarding the DeLorean Motor Company.
Jeez.
He was forced to sell his Bedminster, New Jersey estate. It was purchased by Donald Trump, who tore it down and made it a golf course.
John Delorean's an innocent guy. He's my friend.
He's my friend, very good guy.
Cool car.
March 19th, 2005, John Delorean died after suffering a fatal heart attack in his home. He spent a ton of his time in his final years focusing on a new vehicle he called the DMC-2.
On the nose.
His hopes for a second chance at the sports car market. In an effort to secure funding, he sold 100 pounds of methamphetamines. Just kidding. In an effort to secure funding, he did a bunch of weird stuff. The most notable of which was selling luxury watches on the internet under the name DMC watches. Watches you can still buy today for $140. As it turns out, a lot of the items claimed from the DeLorean factory were never sold and just stored in multiple large warehouses. In fact, there was enough there in those factories that you could even build entire DeLoreans if you had the time and patience. Recently, the DeLorean Motor Company name was purchased by an individual in Texas with the intention of providing restoration parts. Plans are even in the works for the DeLorean Motor Company to start creating their own new DeLoreans for sale to the public.
Yeah, you can buy them, right?
Yep.
Only about 9,000 DeLoreans were ever made before the company failed, but you'd never know that based on how well known and respected the car is today. People love the DeLorean, arguably almost entirely because of its exposure to Back to the Future, not because it's a good car. Still, the DeLorean is an arguably beautiful car, and its styling and presence in pop culture guarantees it will forever be one of the most recognizable cars with one of the craziest backstories of all time.
Here.
Yeah,
Here.
John DeLorean, trouble, not really, I don't know about troubled, but
No, he was very privileged. He got to do anything that he wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And it could have been a really sick car. I wish it would have been, like a Lotus, more like a Lotus, or
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it just seems like, until like the 70s, he was just such a powerhouse.
Yeah, he was like the dude.
He was the guy. I mean, still one of the greatest, I think,
Automotive minds of the
absolutely
20th century,
Absolutely.
100%. One of the most influential guys in all of cars.
Yeah, and I still really admire him despite the
100%.
the
And
his
like,
reputation.
GM guys didn't like his lifestyle and his pizzazz, but like I like
Yeah,
that.
turns
Like,
out,
yeah.
yeah,
pizzazz makes you like someone.
yeah, man, I like pizzazz.
Yeah,
I love like the who the fuck is that guy? You know?
I think a running theme with this show is like, if you're a maverick and you make like $1 million decisions that affect a ton of people's lives, like that shit always backfires.
Yeah.
Like there's always something that trips you up. Like, I don't know. But when you're a huge personality and you're like, everything I've done up to this point has been gold, then you don't have that like foresight to be like, well, maybe this isn't a great idea. You just kind of go with your ego.
Yeah, you've gotten to where you are by not questioning yourself.
Yeah.
And then you don't question yourself when you should have, maybe.
Yeah.
So is the lesson then to not question yourself? I don't think questioning yourself all the time is the correct thing to do. That's something that I've been kind of trying to focus on lately, is second guess myself less, because it always trips me up. But like, maybe just having a friend tell you, hey,
Yeah, totally.
like, check you sometimes.
But you know what, man? At the end of the day, I honestly believe, fuck it, dude. Life's a ride. Yeah, check us out. Every Monday, we're doing an episode of this show everywhere that podcasts are streamed. Check out our YouTube channel if you haven't, Donut Media. Follow Nolan on Instagram and Twitter at Nolan J. Sykes.
Thank
Follow
you.
me on both of those at James Pumphrey. Follow Joe at Dark Webinar.
On Instagram, and Joe Weber on
Joe Webb.
Twitter. Joe Webb.
Sorry, there's
Please,
too many
yeah.
Joe Webbers out there. There's no platform where I have just Joe Weber.
We'll put the Joe's info in the description. Follow Donut on everything at Donut Media. I love you.
Yeah.
I know you're poo-pooing it, but I've got a video you should watch about Jar Jar Binks being the Phantom Menace, and everything makes sense.
Yeah, I think I'm relatively familiar with this theory.
He is, a highly trained goofball.